Well, blessed Tuesday, and I'm going to say blessed Wednesday to you. I was unable to do the daily encouragement for today, so we're going to make it into a double one for both Tuesday and Wednesday. And we are right now in the middle of Revelation 11. And we're going to stall a little bit here because these are probably some of the more important passages of this book. They are symbolisms that convey multiple meanings. And so many people latch on to certain things. But there are some things going on in many people's timetables that this book does not mention. It does not mention when the people of God will be, quote unquote, rescued, or what you would say, raptured into heaven. Even the greatest ways that we can do that will put a space between chapter 3 and chapter 4 of the book that isn't there in the original text. And so, in many ways, we have to view this from the standpoint that you and I are going to be in the midst of these, just like John, experiencing these events. Also, we have to remember that we've reached a point in the book where John isn't just an observer, he is a participant. He has eaten the scroll that came from Revelation 10. And so he sees the vision of the kingdom, or should I say, the new temple that is being built. And that temple has perfection in and of itself, but on the outside there is destruction and sometimes temptations. And so it is a reminder that there is a separation that is happening here. And it is not something that will take place the entire 7 years, as we've been talking about. It takes place for half of that time. So the number 3.5, a time, and a time and a half, needs to be always before us. They symbolize the number 3.5, which is half of 7, half of the perfection of what I would say a tribulation of 7 years. And so there's a lot of numbers things going on. Now, last week I mentioned, or yesterday I mentioned the whole thing about the number of days, and that the number of days is 1,260 days. And that is if you divide a Jewish year by 360. And so, once again, you had to add that number, that time, and time and a half. 360 plus 360 plus 360 plus half of that, which is 180. And so, together, that ends up to be that amount of days. John is just functioning with these numbers to show a perfection of time that is taking place, in which there will be trouble. But there will be a second half, and he'll talk about that second half in the latter part of the book. But now let's go to verse 4 of Revelation 11, chapter 4. These are the 2 olive trees and the 2 lampstands that stand before the Lord of the earth. An olive tree is a symbol of the temple. Jesus rebukes an olive tree that does not produce fruit before he enters the temple, and then when he leaves it, it's withered. So you have to remember that the temple always had a symbol of an olive tree. There's also a symbol of a lampstand, and we know from the beginning of the book of Revelation, this is a symbol of the church. Now, what we've had at the beginning of the book was 7 lampstands. Now we're down to 2. And that is because the lampstands have turned into a symbolism of the faithful witnesses. And according to Deuteronomy, there isn't just one faithful witness. In order for it to hold up in court, it has to have 2 faithful witnesses. If we look at the Gospel of Luke, there's always that importance of putting 2 witnesses for all the events that are taking place in the Gospel of Luke. They go to the temple, and it isn't just Simeon that grabs the child, it is Anna that grabs the child, 2 who become witnesses to them. Also 2 genders, a man who does it and a woman who does it. That way it symbolizes all of the earth is testifying that Jesus is Lord. Going all the way back to the resurrection in the end of Luke. While Mark and Matthew have 1 witness at the resurrection, Luke has specifically 2 angels, 2 men that testify that Jesus is Lord. There's always two, and so we have two faithful temples and two faithful lampstands. And one could say that the temple and the church become one, and so this is a symbol of faithfulness. Two olive branches, two lampstands, olive branches that are not withered, olive branches that are growing. And so at verse 4, these are the two olive trees and these are the two lampstands. What are these? The temple that he just showed would be under persecution but protected for a time and a half, 3.5 years, at least as far as the symbolism is concerned. And so these are the two trees and the two lampstands that stand before the Lord of the earth. And if anyone wants to harm them, fire pours out from their mouth and consumes their foes. Anyone who wants to harm them must be killed in this manner. Fire is a symbol of judgment. Fire is also a symbol of purification. And so there is a perfection that happens. Now we might look at it and say, that's nice symbolism until I get persecuted, until I get killed for the faith, and many throughout the years have been killed for the faith. But always the martyr says, you may harm the body, but you can never harm my soul. My soul has been perfected, has been protected under the blood of the Lamb. And so even if there is persecution that happens, the person never truly dies. They are part of the resurrected power. And the same is the course of Jesus, who endured many things with the cross, died, but also rose again. And so this is the promise of God, the protection of what is truly valuable in our lives. Not our flesh, but our souls, our spirit. So the two olive trees and the two lampstands stand before the Lord, and if anyone wants to harm them, fire pours out from their mouth and consumes their foes. Anyone who wants to harm them must be killed in this manner. They have authority to shut the sky so that no rain may fall during the days of the prophesying, and they have authority over the waters to turn them into blood and to strike the earth with every kind of plague as often as they desire. In other words, we are going back to the authority that was given to Moses during the time of persecution in Egypt. Now, we may struggle with this image. I don't know of anybody living right now that has that type of authority, and we should be skeptical of anyone who goes out proclaiming that they have the authority to shut the heavens or to turn the waters into blood. But the symbolism is so important there. They have the power that rescued Israel from Egypt, rescued Israel from slavery. That even though they are persecuted, the temple of God has been measured and been found secure. And while the nations rise up against it, the protection is not on the outside, the protection is in the inside. And so we have this vision before us. When it will happen, of course, we might ask, has it happened? Is it happening now in a spiritual sense? Will it happen in a physical sense? That's where we get into some interesting interpretations. But for right now, I want you to just experience the symbolic nature of this 3.5, this time, and a time and a half, because we're going to experience it in the next chapter and in the next chapter. Chapters 12 and 13 are all about this type of image. But we're going to stop right here. And remember, this is the message that I have for Tuesday and Wednesday of this week. So I invite you to join us again on Thursday as we continue to wrestle with the visions of Revelation chapter 11. Talk to you later. Take care. We'll see you next time.